The bitter wind swept through downtown Chicago, carrying the promise of an early snowfall. Elena Martinez pulled her wool coat tighter as she hurried along Michigan Avenue, balancing a coffee in one hand and checking emails on her phone with the other. At 34, she had finally secured her position as senior project manager at Horizon Architectural Firm, but the promotion had come with twice the workload and half the personal time. Ms. Martinez, the board meeting has been moved up to 2 p.m. Her assistant's text flashed across her screen. Elena sighed, her breath forming a small cloud in the frigid November air. The pressure of the upcoming presentation weighed on her shoulders. The Riverside Development Project was her first major assignment since her promotion, and securing this contract could cement her reputation in the industry. Lost in thought, she nearly collided with a small figure huddled in the alcove of a closed storefront. A boy, no older than 12, sat with his knees pulled to his chest. His thin jacket was clearly inadequate for the plummeting temperatures, and his sneakers were worn through at the edges. He didn't look up as she stopped, too focused on trying to warm his hands with his breath. Elena hesitated. In the 7 years she'd lived in Chicago, she'd grown accustomed to the unspoken urban code: keep walking, avoid eye contact, donate to organizations instead. But something about the boy's solitude in the morning rush struck her. He wasn't panhandling or asking for help. He was simply trying to escape the wind. "Hey there," Elena said, crouching down to his level. "Are you okay?" The boy glanced up, his eyes wary but clear. "I'm fine, ma'am," he replied, his voice carrying a slight southern accent. "Just waiting for the library to open." Elena checked her watch. It was only 7:30 a.m. The public library wouldn't open for another hour and a half. "That's a long wait in this cold," she said. "Have you had breakfast?" The boy looked away, a subtle shake of his head answering her question. Elena made a quick decision. "I'm going to grab something from the cafe across the street." "Would you like anything?" His eyes widened slightly before narrowing with suspicion. "Why?" It was a fair question. "Because it's cold, and no one should sit hungry when there's food 20 feet away," she answered honestly. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "Thank you, ma'am." "I'm Elena," she offered. "Daniel," he replied, the caution in his eyes softening slightly. Inside the cafe, Elena ordered a breakfast sandwich, hot chocolate, and a banana for Daniel. While waiting, she made a quick call to her assistant to prepare some backup materials for the meeting. As an afterthought, she added a second sandwich to her order. When she returned, Daniel accepted the food with careful hands. "Thank you, Ms. Elena." She sat beside him in the alcove, placing her briefcase between them. "Do you mind if I join you for a few minutes?" Daniel shook his head, already unwrapping the sandwich. He ate methodically, taking measured bites as though making it last. "Do you go to the library often?" Elena asked. Daniel nodded, swallowing before answering. "They have computers there. I'm working on a science project about renewable energy." Elena's interest piqued. "That sounds fascinating. What grade are you in?" "Seventh," Daniel replied, wrapping half of the sandwich back up and tucking it in his pocket. "My teacher says I have a knack for engineering problems." "I work with engineers every day," Elena said. "They're designing a new community center right now that will use solar panels." Daniel's eyes lit up. "With photovoltaic cells or concentrated solar power?" Elena blinked, surprised by his knowledge. "Photovoltaic, I believe. You really know your stuff." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I read a lot." As they talked, Elena learned that Daniel had moved to Chicago with his mother 3 months ago from Tennessee. His mother worked 2 jobs, an early morning cleaning shift and an evening position at a diner. They were staying with a distant cousin temporarily, but the arrangement was strained. "Mom drops me off on her way to work," Daniel explained. "The library's safe, and I can study there until school starts." Elena checked her watch and realized she needed to leave for her meeting prep. "I have to go, but here," she said, handing him the second sandwich. "For lunch." Daniel hesitated before accepting it. "Thank you, ma'am." As Elena stood to leave, she made another impulsive decision. She pulled out her business card and wrote her cell number on the back. "If you ever need help with that science project or anything else, you can call me." The architectural firm where I work has some pretty amazing engineers who love talking about renewable energy. Daniel looked at the card carefully before tucking it securely in his jacket pocket. I appreciate it. As Elena walked away, turning once to see Daniel still sitting there with his hot chocolate, she couldn't shake the feeling that their paths had crossed for a reason. She pushed the thought aside as she entered her office building, already refocusing on the upcoming presentation that could change the trajectory of her career. Little did she know that the simple act of kindness would set in motion events that would change both their lives forever. 3 days later, Elena was working late in her office, the Chicago skyline twinkling through her window as evening settled over the city. The Riverside presentation had gone well, but the clients had requested additional sustainability options, which meant another weekend sacrificed to work. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally, she would let it go to voicemail, but something compelled her to answer. "Hello, Elena Martinez speaking." There was a pause, then a hesitant voice. "Ms. Elena? It's Daniel. From the other day." Elena sat up straighter, surprised. "Daniel, hi. Is everything okay?" "Yes, ma'am, He faltered. "I was wondering about those engineers you mentioned. For my project." Relief washed over her. "Of course. Actually, we have a department meeting tomorrow with our sustainability team. Would you like to sit in? It might give you some ideas." The silence that followed was so long that Elena thought they'd lost the connection. "That would be amazing," Daniel finally said, his voice barely containing his excitement. "But I wouldn't want to bother anyone." "It's no bother," Elena assured him. "How about I meet you at the library after school? Around 4 p.m.? They arranged the details, and as Elena hung up, she wondered what had prompted her to invite a 7th grader to a professional meeting. Something about Daniel's quiet intelligence and resilience had struck a chord with her. Perhaps it reminded her of her own childhood in East Los Angeles, where opportunities had been scarce until a high school teacher had taken an interest in her aptitude for design. The next day, Elena found Daniel waiting outside the library, his school backpack neat but visibly worn. He had attempted to dress up, wearing a collared shirt that was slightly too large for his frame. "You look very professional," Elena said with a smile. Daniel ducked his head, embarrassed but pleased. "Mom helped me pick it out. She says I should thank you properly for the opportunity." "I'm happy to help," Elena replied, leading him toward her office building. "Just be yourself, and if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask." These engineers love talking about their work, almost too much sometimes. In the elevator, Daniel grew quiet, his nervousness evident in how tightly he gripped the straps of his backpack. "You know," Elena said conversationally, "I was terrified the first time I presented to a room full of engineers, but then I realized something. They were just people who got really excited about solving problems." Daniel nodded, taking a deep breath. "I just don't want to say something stupid. Trust me, these are the people who once spent 45 minutes debating the optimal angle for a rain gutter. Your questions will be refreshing." That earned a small smile from Daniel as the elevator doors opened to Horizon's modern office space. The meeting exceeded Elena's expectations. Daniel initially sat quietly beside her, observing the discussion about energy-efficient building materials. But when the lead engineer mentioned challenges with the solar panel installation, Daniel raised his hand. "Have you considered a microinverter system instead of a string inverter?" he asked, his voice steady despite the room's attention. "It might be more expensive initially, but the efficiency gains in partial shading conditions could offset the cost over time." The room fell silent for a moment before the sustainability director, James Washington, broke into a broad smile. "That's exactly the issue we've been discussing internally," James said, visibly impressed. "How did you know about that?" Daniel's confidence grew as he explained his research on solar technologies, including a science fair project he'd done at his previous school. By the end of the meeting, Daniel was engaged in animated conversation with 3 engineers, who were sketching diagrams and answering his rapid-fire questions. Elena watched from across the room, an unexpected sense of pride warming her chest. "Your nephew is remarkable," James commented as he joined her. "I've never seen someone so young grasp these concepts so thoroughly." Elena hesitated before responding. "He's not my nephew. He's..." She wasn't sure how to explain their connection. "He's a student I'm mentoring." James raised an eyebrow but nodded appreciatively. "Well, he's got a bright future. We could use minds like his in the industry." After the meeting, Elena took Daniel to the office cafeteria for dinner. As they ate, she learned more about his life. His mother, Lucia, had left Tennessee after losing her job at a manufacturing plant that had closed. Chicago offered more opportunities, but the transition had been difficult. Daniel had left behind friends and his spot on the science team. "Mom works so hard," Daniel said, his eyes downcast. "I don't want to add to her stress by complaining." Elena recognized the weight of responsibility that no 12-year-old should have to bear. "It's okay to miss your old life, Daniel. And it's okay to want things to be better." "We're gonna be okay," Daniel insisted, with the stubborn optimism of a child who'd had to grow up too quickly. "Mom says we just need to get through this rough patch." As they prepared to leave, James approached their table with a folder. "Daniel, I thought you might be interested in these," he said, placing the folder in front of the boy. "There's some preliminary designs for a renewable energy project we're working on for a school in Wisconsin. If you have any insights, I'd love to hear them." Daniel's eyes widened as he carefully opened the folder. "Really? You want my opinion?" "Absolutely," James confirmed. "Fresh eyes often see what we miss. Elena has my email. Send me your thoughts when you're ready." After James left, Daniel looked at Elena with disbelief. "Is he serious?" "James doesn't say things he doesn't mean," Elena assured him. "He was impressed by you today. We all were." As they rode the bus to Daniel's neighborhood, Elena noticed his hands never left the folder. When they reached his stop, a small apartment complex in a working-class area, Daniel turned to her. "Thank you," he said simply, but the words carried the weight of genuine gratitude. "This was the best day I've had since moving here." Elena smiled. "You earned it. Your knowledge did that, not me." As Daniel walked toward his building, Elena felt a growing certainty that this wasn't the end of their connection, but rather the beginning of something significant. She just couldn't have predicted how quickly that something would unfold. A week passed, during which Daniel sent James a thoughtful analysis of the school energy project. His insights were so practical that James forwarded the email to the entire sustainability team, copying Elena. "We might need to offer this kid an internship in about 5 years," James wrote. Elena had just finished reading the email when her phone rang. It was Theodore Wilson, CEO of Wilson Innovations, one of the largest clean energy investment firms in the country, and the primary client for the Riverside Development Project. "Ms. Martinez," his deep voice resonated through the phone, "I've been reviewing your proposal, and I'm particularly interested in the community education component." Elena straightened in her chair. "Yes, Mr. Wilson. We believe that sustainable development should include educational opportunities for the community, especially young people." "I couldn't agree more," Wilson replied. "In fact, I'm calling because my foundation is launching a National Young Innovators Program. We're selecting 20 exceptional students from across the country for a fully funded innovation camp this summer, followed by mentorship and college scholarship opportunities." Elena listened attentively, wondering why he was sharing this with her. "James Washington mentioned a young protege of yours with remarkable insight into renewable energy applications," Wilson continued. "I'd like to meet this young man. We're hosting a selection event this weekend at our corporate headquarters. Could you arrange for him to attend?" Elena's mind raced. This was an extraordinary opportunity for Daniel, but she was also conscious of overstepping boundaries. "I'd need to speak with his mother first, Mr. Wilson. He's not actually my protege. He's a student I've been informally mentoring." "Of course," Wilson said. "The event is this Saturday. We'll have presentations from previous scholarship recipients and interviews with potential candidates. My private jet will be bringing in students from across the Midwest. I can arrange for seats for both Daniel and his mother if that would make them more comfortable." Elena nearly dropped her phone. "A private jet?" Wilson chuckled. "It's more practical than arranging individual travel for multiple families. We're flying in candidates from Detroit, Minneapolis, and Indianapolis as well." After ending the call, Elena sat in stunned silence. Theodore Wilson was known not only for his business acumen, but also for his philanthropic work in education. His foundation had helped hundreds of underprivileged students pursue careers in STEM fields. This could be life-changing for Daniel. But first, she needed to speak with Lucia. Finding Daniel's home wasn't difficult with the address he'd provided for emergency contact information. That evening, Elena made her way to the apartment complex. It was a modest building, well-maintained, but showing signs of age. Lucia Martinez opened the door looking exhausted, still wearing her diner uniform. She was younger than Elena had expected, probably in her early 30s, with the same intelligent eyes as her son. "Ms. Elena?" she said, recognition dawning. "Daniel has told me so much about you. Please, come in." The apartment was small but meticulously clean. Textbooks and papers were organized on the kitchen table, evidently Daniel's study area. The boy himself appeared from a side room, his surprise quickly turning to excitement. "Ms. Elena, did you see my email to Mr. Washington?" "I did," Elena smiled. "Everyone at the office is impressed. That's actually why I'm here." Over cups of coffee for the adults and hot chocolate for Daniel, Elena explained Theodore Wilson's invitation. As she spoke, she watched Lucia's expression shift from skepticism to cautious hope. "A private jet?" Lucia echoed Elena's earlier reaction. "And this man wants to meet Daniel because of his ideas about solar panels?" "Mr. Wilson's foundation is serious about finding and supporting young talent," Elena explained. "The program includes mentorship through high school and a substantial college scholarship." Lucia's hands tightened around her mug. "It sounds too good to be true." "I had the same thought," Elena admitted. "But Wilson Innovations is a reputable company, and their foundation has a documented track record. I can show you their annual reports and testimonials from previous scholarship recipients." Daniel, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. "Mom, this could help with college. I know you've been worried about that." Lucia's eyes softened as she looked at her son. "I've always told you that education would open doors. I just didn't expect those doors to open so soon." She turned to Elena. "Why are you doing this for us? We're practically strangers." The question caught Elena off guard. Why had she invested so much in a boy she barely knew? The answer came with surprising clarity. "When I was growing up, my family struggled too," she said. "My father worked construction. My mother cleaned houses. I was good at math and drawing, but college seemed impossible until my high school teacher submitted my design to a competition. I won a scholarship that changed everything." She met Lucia's gaze directly. "Someone opened a door for me. I'm just trying to do the same for Daniel." Something in Lucia's expression shifted, a recognition of shared experience that transcended their different circumstances. "The jet leaves at 9 a.m. on Saturday," Elena continued. "I can pick you both up at 7:30 if you decide to go." Lucia was quiet for a long moment before nodding slowly. "We'll go, but I have conditions. I need to be present for any interviews, and Daniel makes no commitments without time to consider." "That's completely reasonable," Elena agreed. As she prepared to leave, Daniel walked her to the door. "Do you really think I have a chance?" he asked quietly. Elena looked at the boy who had impressed veteran engineers with his knowledge and insight. "I think you have more than a chance, Daniel. I think you might just surprise everyone, including yourself." The following Saturday, Elena arrived at the apartment to find both Daniel and Lucia waiting outside. Daniel wore the same collared shirt, freshly ironed, and Lucia had dressed in a simple but professional black dress, likely her best outfit. The drive to the private airfield was filled with nervous energy. Daniel peppered Elena with questions about what to expect, while Lucia sat quietly in the passenger seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When they arrived and saw the sleek private jet with Wilson Innovations emblazoned on its side, reality seemed to sink in for both mother and son. 24 hours ago I was serving pancakes at the diner," Lucia murmured, "and now we're boarding a private jet. Ani, all because you gave a sandwich to a boy in the cold," Daniel added, looking at Elena with undisguised admiration. Elena shook her head, smiling. "No, this is happening because of who you are, Daniel. The sandwich just gave us the chance to meet. As they approached the jet, Elena reflected on how a small moment of kindness had led to this extraordinary day. Whatever happened at Wilson Innovations, she knew that Daniel's life, and her own, had already been irreversibly changed by their chance encounter. The Wilson Innovations headquarters in northern Michigan was a marvel of sustainable architecture. A sprawling complex of glass and reclaimed wood nestled among pine trees, powered entirely by renewable energy. As they stepped off the jet alongside 3 other families, Daniel's eyes widened at the solar array that rotated slowly to track the sun. "It's even better than the pictures," he whispered. They were greeted by Caroline Reeves, the Foundation's program director, who led them to a welcome reception where breakfast was being served. The atmosphere was warm but undeniably evaluative. Foundation staff circulated among the families, engaging the students in conversation. Lucia stayed close to Daniel, her protective instincts evident. Elena noticed her gradually relaxing as she observed the other parents, ordinary people from diverse backgrounds, all united by their children's exceptional abilities. After breakfast, the students were divided into small groups for a tour of the innovation labs while parents attended an information session. Elena was invited to join the parents as Daniel's mentor. "He'll be fine," Elena assured Lucia, as Daniel was led away with 3 other students. "This is his element." The information session outlined the program in detail. Summer innovation camps for 3 consecutive years, monthly online mentoring sessions, research stipends for independent projects, and ultimately a full scholarship to a university of the students' choosing, provided they pursued a STEM field. "We're not just investing in these students' education," Caroline explained. "We're investing in solutions for the future." Previous scholarship recipients have already patented innovations in water purification, energy storage, and sustainable agriculture. As the parents asked questions, Elena watched Lucia's expression. The woman was calculating, evaluating, determining whether this opportunity was truly as promising as it seemed. When they reunited with the students for lunch, Daniel was animated in a way Elena hadn't seen before. He'd connected with a girl from Detroit who shared his interest in renewable energy, and a boy from Indianapolis who was developing a low-cost water filtration system. "Ms. Reeves said my questions about microinverter efficiency were graduate level," he told them proudly. "And Dr. Lambert wants to show me the quantum computing lab after lunch." The afternoon brought the most crucial part of the day: individual interviews. Each student and their parent or guardian met with a panel of Foundation representatives, including Theodore Wilson himself. As Daniel and Lucia disappeared into the conference room, Elena waited anxiously in the atrium. 45 minutes later, 15 minutes longer than scheduled, they emerged. Daniel looked stunned, while Lucia's eyes were suspiciously bright. Before Elena could ask how it went, Theodore Wilson himself followed them out. He was a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and keen eyes that missed nothing. "Ms. Martinez," he said, extending his hand, "I understand we have you to thank for bringing Daniel to our attention." "Daniel did that all on his own," Elena replied, shaking his hand. "I just made an introduction." Wilson smiled knowingly. "Sometimes that's all it takes to change a life." He turned to Daniel and Lucia. "I've instructed Caroline to add your name to our welcome packet, Ms. Martinez. I believe your involvement will be valuable to Daniel's development in the program." Elena looked at Lucia in surprise. "I requested it," Lucia explained quietly. "You've believed in Daniel from the beginning. I want you to be part of this journey if you're willing." "I'd be honored," Elena said, genuinely moved. Wilson nodded approvingly. "Excellent. We'll be announcing the final selections within 2 weeks, but I can tell you that our panel was extremely impressed." He shook Daniel's hand firmly. "Young man, I suspect we'll be seeing your name on patents before too long." As Wilson departed, Daniel finally broke his silence. "Mr. Wilson asked about my 5-year goals, and I told him I want to develop affordable solar solutions for low-income housing." His voice was filled with wonder. He said they've been looking for someone to lead that initiative in their Junior Innovators program. The flight back to Chicago was considerably more relaxed than the morning journey. Lucia dozed in her seat. the exhaustion of working double shifts finally catching up with her. Daniel sketched designs in a notebook provided by the foundation, occasionally showing Elena his ideas. "Even if I don't get selected," he said softly, careful not to wake his mother, "today was worth it. I've never met so many people who think like me." "You'll get selected," Elena assured him. "But even if, by some strange chance you don't, this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." 2 weeks later, Elena's phone rang just as she was leaving a client meeting. "We got the package!" Daniel's voice was breathless with excitement. "Mom's crying. I've never seen her cry happy tears before." Elena felt her own eyes growing misty. "I knew you could do it, Daniel. There's something else," he continued. "Mr. Wilson called personally. He said the foundation has a housing assistance program for scholarship families. They're offering Mom a position as a community liaison for their Chicago projects, with an apartment in their staff housing complex." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Ms. Elena, the apartment has 2 bedrooms. I'll have my own room for the first time ever." Elena leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by how dramatically Daniel's life had changed in just a few short weeks. "That's wonderful news, Daniel. Matter. Mom says you have to come for dinner to celebrate. She's making her special enchiladas. I wouldn't miss it for the world." That evening, as Elena sat in Lucia and Daniel's new apartment, spacious, bright, and located just 3 blocks from an excellent public school with a robust STEM program, she marveled at how a simple act of kindness had spiraled into such profound change. Daniel proudly showed her the welcome package, which included a laptop, books on engineering and sustainable design, and a detailed schedule for the summer innovation camp. "There's something else," he said, pulling out a small envelope. "This is for you." Inside was a handwritten note from Theodore Wilson. "Ms. Martinez, your recognition of potential where others saw only circumstance reminds us why human connection remains our greatest renewable resource. The Horizon Wilson Scholarship for first-generation architectural students has been established in your honor. With gratitude, Theodore Wilson." Attached was a press release announcing a new partnership between Wilson Innovations and Horizon Architectural Firm to develop sustainable housing solutions for underserved communities, with Elena named as project director. "James called me this afternoon," Elena explained to Lucia's questioning look. Apparently, Mr. Wilson was as impressed with Horizon's community vision as he was with Daniel. "This partnership has been in discussion for months, but my name on the project is new." Lucia raised her glass of sparkling cider. "To seeing potential," she said, her eyes warm with gratitude. "And to sandwiches," Daniel added with a grin. As they laughed together, Elena reflected on the remarkable chain of events. One cold morning, she had made a small decision to acknowledge another human being's dignity and needs. That decision had rippled outward, transforming not only Daniel's life, but her own. The boy who had once huddled in a storefront alcove now had a clear path to achieve his remarkable potential. The mother who had worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat now had stability and purpose. And Elena, who had been so focused on climbing the corporate ladder, had rediscovered the deeper purpose that had drawn her to architecture in the first place, creating spaces where people could thrive. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest actions: a sandwich offered to a stranger, a business card with a phone number, a willingness to see beyond circumstances to the person underneath. In a world that often felt disconnected and cold, these small bridges between lives could transform not just individual destinies, but entire communities. As the evening wound down and Elena prepared to leave, Daniel walked her to the door. "Ms. Elena," he said hesitantly, "do you believe in fate, that some things are meant to happen?" Elena considered the question seriously. "I believe that when we act with kindness, we create possibilities that didn't exist before. Whether that's fate or just the natural result of connecting with others, I'm not sure it matters." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Either way, I'm glad you stopped that morning." "So am I, Daniel," Elena replied, seeing not just the boy he was but the remarkable man he would become. "So am I."